Hello and welcome back to Scale Modelling Cafe and this week's update. An exciting one this time because this little thing I've finished. But before I get onto that, let's just have a chat about what's gone on with the channel. So last Monday, a day late, was part 2 of the Edward 109F in 72nd scale. That dealt with the cockpit. Part 3 construction will go out tomorrow, which is Sunday. I think that's an interesting video because it's quite an innovative design for the 109F. It is based on the Avia S199. So if you've seen that, a lot of stuff goes carries over into the 109, and that's going to carry through all the 72nd scale series and the 48th K4, which is due out next month, September. So even if you're not a fan of 72nd, if you're looking to get the Edward K4 in 48th next month, then I think it's worth a watch because a lot of the design solutions from that kit are going across into the K4. So it's not going to be based on their other 48th scale kits. It's going to be based on the 72nd. There are some interesting, as I said, design features in that and interesting parts breakdown. So it's well worth a watch, I think. And then the week after that will be the final part, which will be the painting and weathering. That's going to be an interesting video as well because I do a winter whitewash, and I know some of you have been asking for a winter whitewash tutorial. So I'm going to do that, and maybe I'll pluck that out and do that as a separate. I'll see what footage I've got and whether there's enough to do another separate video on a winter whitewash and the weathering of that. It might not be the best one to do because it's 72nd, so it's a little bit small, but we'll see. The other one on that is I used Edward decals, obviously, and there'll be a little bit of a, you can see how I got on using the Edward decals and removing the carrier film on that video, which is an awesome segue into last week's chat video, which was my opinion on Edward decals. Now, Edward have come in for an awful lot of criticism over their new decals. They used to outsource to Cartograph. They had their own in-house decal printing as well, but a few years ago they invested obviously in some new machinery and started with this new style of Edward decal, and yeah, it's caused a bit of a kerfuffle really with people because of the quality of the printing in the decals. So I addressed that in the video. I also addressed the carrier film issue as well, and I just give my opinion on it. Many of you commented, which is absolutely fantastic, so thank you for that. I have just finished replying to all of them. A lot of you, more than I was expecting, actually were in agreement and said they're not as bad as what many people have said. Some of you have said they are as bad as some people said, which is fine. It's everybody's opinion. Some people, one or two people, have even said that they haven't bought any Edward kits for a few years because they don't like the decals. Well, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot there because you're missing out, because their kits are absolutely sublime at the moment. They're on a real roll. The 109F that I just built in 72nd is a beautiful kit, as was the Mezek, the S199. Yeah, some beautiful kits, and you don't have to use the decals. Some people said, well, I want to use their decals because they do some really lovely schemes, but I'm still not going to buy the kit because I don't want to use the decals. Well, just buy some aftermarket then. The aftermarket lot, those guys do interesting schemes, because if they didn't, they wouldn't sell their decals, would they? So yeah, just go and buy some aftermarket decals or some Montex, or get some masks done and, you know, and paint them on, which is, to be honest, what I do anyway. But yeah, there you go. So an interesting response and an interesting discussion. So thank you for that. If you haven't watched it, I recommend it, and it'd be interesting if you've not said anything, what your thoughts are. I've got an idea for another chat video that's just forming in my head whilst I've been talking, and yeah, I may well film that now and put that out in the week. So, you know, watch out for that one if it comes. I'll see how I get on. Right, the project update then. This little thing, the H-75N in 48 scale from ClearProp. It's finished. So, because there's not really any news to speak of this week, other than Special Hobby have released some sprue shots of their 48 scale Baltimore, which is coming, which looks lovely. That's it for the news. I thought I'd just give a little bit of a debrief on this. In summary, it's a beautiful, beautiful kit. The cockpit is amazing. The surface detail is amazing. The fit is amazing. I did have one or two issues, which I'll go into in a minute, but that was me, I suspect, not the kit, and I'll explain why shortly. I've put pictures on my Facebook page. I also put pictures of the cockpit on my Facebook page last week. So, you know, pop over to the Scale Modelling Cafe on Facebook to have a look at those, but I will put some up here. As I said, the cockpit is beautiful. It's highly detailed. I added a little bit of wiring here and there just to dress it up a little bit. And I also used a fair few of the Airscales cockpit placards just to busy things up a bit, and that really lifted it and took it to another level. The instrument panel is from an Edward P40B set for the trumpeter kit. The excuse me, ClearProp actually provides you with a decal and a photo etched instrument panel, which you paint and then stick over the decal. I did try that out. You do actually get two instrument panels, a blank one and one with all the detail. I did try it out and it looked really good, I have to say, but I did stick the decal down slightly off center, which was a bit of a pain in the bum, but if I got that right, it would have looked even better. But I did use the colour photo etch in there. The other bit of aftermarket I used was the seat from SBS Models from Hungary. The one thing that lets this kit down is the seat. It's really chunky, there's no detail to it at all, and it looks pants. The SBS one it's cast resin, not 3D printed, and it is for this kit. So you do get the little sort of cutouts, so it does just drop in, and it's a vast improvement. So I highly recommend that. And the Billy bonus is you get two seats in the packet. I did use the colour photo etch from the Edward set in there, purely because I couldn't be bothered to paint the one that's supplied on the kit photo etch set. That's the cockpit. What I really like about the engineering on this is you put the two fuselage halves together and then you can deal with all the seams, clean it all out, give it a wash, and then the cockpit tub slots in from underneath, which is really nice, which means there's none of that sort of errant sanding dust that you've missed sort of gets in behind the glasswork. And obviously you've got that glasswork behind the cockpit which you get any dust down there, you're in trouble. You then put the top decking on, and then you put the wings and the tailplanes on. The wings, they fitted great. I made a bit of a faux pas in that I forgot to, luckily I realised after I'd glued the first wing down, is I forgot to drill the holes for the gun pods. So I managed to do that on one side, and then the other side I just had to, I used my calipers and I managed to drill those holes out, so I saved the day. So the airframe, it fits together beautifully. That wing to fuselage joint is Tamiya-esque, honestly. There is a seam, or not a seam, a join. Oh, the propeller's come off. It's not glued in, and I did modify that with a bit of tubing, so it does spin, which is cool. Yeah, so the wing root fairing that sort of sticks out the back of the wing, the join is along the middle of that fairing, and honestly it's just the smallest of glue seams. It fits just beautifully. I did use a little bit of super glue, smear of super glue over the top, just because I just belt and braces to make sure that seam disappeared, and it did anyway, I think. Yeah, so that's the wing to fuselage joint. Now, the one bit where I had a bit of a problem was the cowling. The engine, I used the aftermarket resin exhaust and engine mount, and then when I glued the engine, and the only addition to the engine I used was I did wire it up. If this is the engine mount, then the engine obviously sticks here. I did actually glue a plastic, I just got a strip of plastic card, glued it round the inside of in a circle, and then glued it on for a stronger joint. But when it was drying, and obviously I used super glue, the engine did sort of move out a little bit at the bottom, so it was on a very slight angle. And that interfered with the fit of the cowling. So you put the two cowling pieces on, and then the bit on the bottom, and then the cowling sticks on the front, and you have to build it up with the engine in situ around the engine because it tapers backwards. So yeah, that didn't really work. Which was a bit of a nightmare, and it was all my fault. So I ended up using, there were gaps at the bottom, and there's a bit of a step at the top, and it wasn't as tidy as it should have been. And that was all down to me and not the kit. With that done, it was on to the painting. I didn't prime this model. Number one, because there weren't that many seams. I did sort of prime over the seams just to make sure that they were all good, but I wanted to preserve those rivets as much as possible. So I used MRP Light Ghost Grey for the underneath, and then mixes of GSI Krios or Guns and Tamiya for the top three colours. But I painted the main markings on. I didn't use Nige and his masks. I actually did it myself, big boy. Not on a silhouette cutter. I used my Infinity cutting mat thing to get the parallel straight lines of the correct width once I'd measured them all. And that worked brilliant. So I did the white. I then put the blue bit in the middle as a make sure they were sort of in the right place. Then the two white bits, removed the blue, and then painted the blue in the red, and then masked those off, and then painted the camouflage. The rudder was separate. There is a decal that you can use over the rudder, but it is a lot bigger than the rudder, which means you can't use it for sizing either. I'm wondering if they did it too big to enable you to wrap the decal around on both sides. Yeah, so I just used a bit of Siemens. I measured it off. And yeah, the weathering standards for me, sludge wash, individual colours for the individual camouflage colours. So they all complement rather than just one over the top. and because there's sort of dark colours and light colours, one colour just wouldn't work. Then I sealed that in with some VMS satin varnish. Then I went in with the oil dot technique and I started underneath. And even though I left the varnish overnight, I think it was still a little bit soft. I think probably 24 hours at least for the VMS varnish, because I did sort of rub it away in some areas. So I stopped what I was doing, cleaned it up, used some MRP varnish, matte varnish, which gives a very similar sheen. And then I finished off the oil dot weathering. I did a little bit more oil weathering for some contrast and some dirt and grime. I did some post shading. I did a little bit of chipping with pencil, sponge and brush. And then it was just doing all the little bits and pieces. The only other thing I'll mention is I used the ClearProp aftermarket Pito, which is done by Master. You get the brass bit and there's a resin bit for the end, which is cool. And I replaced the tail wheel strut, which is plastic. I replaced it with wire because it's a bit of a weak point. And then the last two bits was I did the use the Ushi Van der Rosten rigging, which is why I've got to be very careful how I pick it up, because that's it's just rig and wires all over the bloody place. And the Photo Etch ring and bead sight at the front. And that was it, all done. And I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Love it to bits. It's a beautiful model. It went together brilliantly, apart from the cowling, which was my fault because I didn't mount the engine correctly. And it's just really highly, highly recommended. If you've not built a ClearProp kit, then just go and get one. They make some beautiful models, and I really think they're under the radar. They're kind of overshadowed a bit, I think, by ICM out in Ukraine. Yeah, I think this is better than ICM because it's riveted. And it's so fine, the rivets. They're beautiful. Go and try ClearProp kit if you haven't, because they're amazing. Also, I've done the Sonya. I've got the Sonya in 72nd. That's here. I'm going to do that at some point. Obviously, I did that in 1/4/4 scale. And I've got a couple of the MiG-23s, which I really want to do as well. So, yeah, massive ClearProp fanboy. Now, they did send me, I'll be open and honest, they did offer to send me some kits. This was one of them that I requested, but that box, unfortunately, never arrived. I don't know why. They did send me one of the MiG-23s, and I did buy the other two. So, yeah, I just thought I'd be open and honest about that. But that one I bought, and I'm very glad I did, because it's beautiful. Right, which leads me on to what is the next kit. And for me, it's something different. It's something very exciting for me. Something I've been... I've had my eye on for a little while. Now, I like modern, state-of-the-art models. I don't want to struggle putting things together, and then I'll just be annoyed about how they turn out. But I'm doing something, I guess, out of my comfort zone, I suppose you could call it. It's this. It's the Airfix Vintage Classic Beaver. This was released fairly recently, actually, and it was a Father's Day present from the children. I did ask for it, and they very kindly bought this for me. And I thought I'd give it a go. I've got some aftermarket for it. I've got an aftermarket engine. It's from 1971, so it's almost as, well, I say almost as old as me. It's a year older than me. I was born in 72. In fact, it's my birthday in a few weeks. And it, the aim of this is to try and get it to look like a modern state-of-the-art kit. It has raised rivets, which are actually not too bad, but I'm going to get rid of all the raised rivets and the raised panel lines. It's going to have a full rescribe job and a full re-rivet job. there's lots of sticky out bits, pitos, aerials, footsteps, things like that, that lend themselves to being replaced with wire and whatnot, and plastic card. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can do with this. The thing where I'm going to struggle, I think, is the clear parts. But I've got a plan. I've got a plan for those. We shall see. But yeah, really looking forward to cracking on with that. I might even start that tomorrow. But I've got an awful lot of editing to do. I've got to finish off the 109. I'm halfway through the last part, and I've got to do the H-75N, and I've got an important assessment flight on Monday. I've done a refresher course for training pilots again to help them out because they're massively behind. So I've done my refresher course last week, so I've got my assessment flight, so I need to be on top of my game for that. So I've got some studies to do this weekend. So I may start with that tomorrow and just get cracking a little bit, just to get my juices flowing, if you like. It's going to be interesting. Right, there we are. I've whittled on and off. I've whittled on enough. I think that's over 20 minutes now. Yeah, thanks very much for all the engagement I've had over the last with the last couple of videos. Yeah, keep it up. It's great. I love those discussions in the comments. It really pleases me that people are engaging. I love it, and I'm nearly on 3,000 subscribers. I've got about 40 or 50 to go. So I think it was 2959, I think, something like that when I last checked. So I never really say this, do I? Because I'm not in it for the numbers game. But yeah, feel free to, if you're not a subscriber, yeah, just go on, give it a click and get me to 3,000. That would be absolutely fantastic. Interestingly, only about half of the subscribers actually watch the videos, which I find a bit odd. So if you're a subscriber and you don't watch the videos, watch the videos. There we are. Right, that's my little plea. So I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. So cheers, bye-bye.